Let's dive into this stack of info you sent our way. It's all about OKRs and CFRs, huh? So it looks like you're really trying to get a handle on this stuff. You've got some excerpts here from Measure What Matters
Yeah.
by John Doerr. This book, by the way, it's like a who's who of incredible thinkers. You've got Bill Gates in here, Bono, Larry Page, Sheryl Sandberg.
Oh, yeah. A ton of big
It's
names.
a ton of people.
Mm.
So we're going to try to distill all this down into like the core principles. What are the surprising success stories, and are there any practical tips that you can actually use? So I know you already know what OKRs stands for, objectives and key results.
Right.
But Doerr really frames it as like this secret weapon. He actually calls it Intel's secret weapon.
Yeah.
And he tells this really cool story about Andy Grove using OKRs to basically orchestrate this whole plan called Operation Crush.
Oh, yeah.
It was this strategic move that let Intel basically outmaneuver Motorola in, like the whole microprocessor market.
Right. And that's what's so interesting about that story is like how OKRs can really force you to focus and be strategic in your thinking. Because, Intel wasn't just reacting to the competition, they were being proactive, setting ambitious goals and getting everyone on board.
Totally, yeah.
It wasn't just about winning one battle, it was about, really owning the market.
Yeah, dominating. So it makes you think about how OKRs could really, completely transform how we tackle challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
So Doerr talks about the 4 superpowers of OKRs: focus, align, track, and stretch.
Yes.
So let's start with focus. Beyond just choosing a few important goals to work on, what are some of the other important nuances of focus?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that Doerr talked about is how focus has to change. It's not static.
Okay, interesting.
So he actually uses the story of Remind. It's that education communication platform. And the founders, Brett and David Koff, they started out with this really simple goal, like how can we help students succeed? So they sent out these personalized study reminders. And at first, their focus was really on just like the technical side of things. How do we build this platform?
Yeah. And Brett Koff has that whole thing with ADHD and dyslexia, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And how he learned to focus on one thing at a time,
Yeah.
and how that really helped him succeed.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, how his personal story shaped that whole journey with Remind.
It really did, yeah. And as Remind went from sending reminders with Excel macros, right, to a platform with millions of users.
Wow.
Their focus had to change. It wasn't just about the product anymore. They had to keep their team aligned.
Totally.
Especially because they were growing so fast.
Yeah, so it's not just about picking the right goals at the start.
Yeah.
But realizing that your focus might have to change as the organization and its challenges change. It's like what got you here won't get you there, right?
Yeah. And Doerr says that constantly checking back and making sure you're focused on the right things, that's a huge part of making OKRs work.
I see.
He actually highlights this advice that Brett Koff got from Denise Whitefield. She told him, just pick one and talk about it. And I think that's really important because it's so easy to get distracted. But you got to be able to cut through all the noise.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a great lesson in strategic focus. But once you've figured out what to focus on, how do you get everyone in the organization on the same page, all working together towards that same goal?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where alignment comes in, right?
Right, exactly. And one of the best tools for alignment is cascading OKRs. So basically, objectives flow down from the top, and then those key results, those become objectives for the level below that. Doerr actually uses this fun analogy about a fantasy football team. They're called the Sandhill Unicorns.
I love a good analogy. Lay it on me.
So you have the general manager, right? And his objective is to make the owner money.
Okay.
And his key results are to win the Super Bowl and fill the stadium to 90% capacity.
Right.
So those key results, they then become objectives for the head coach and the marketing team.
I see.
So the head coach is focused on winning the Super Bowl, right? So he sets key results about the passing attack, the defense, special teams. And the marketing team, they got to fill that stadium, so they focus on branding, media, all that stuff.
So it's like this chain reaction of objectives and key results, all linked back to the top goal.
Exactly.
But how do you make sure that this cascading thing doesn't get too rigid? You don't want to create these silos within the organization.
That's a really important point, yeah. Cascading can really help with alignment, but you got to be smart about how you do it.
Right.
Otherwise, you might stifle innovation and people won't feel like they can contribute.
So what's the trick? How do you avoid those pitfalls? What does Doerr recommend?
Well, one of the key things is finding that balance between top-down direction and bottom-up input.
Gotcha.
So while the objectives might come from the top, the people who are actually doing the work should have a say in setting those key results.
Makes sense.
That way you get buy-in and you're also using the knowledge of the people who are closest to the work.
Yeah. You're empowering the teams to actually contribute their ideas.
Exactly. And it's not about creating a strict hierarchy.
Okay.
It's about creating a framework where everyone can work together
Mm-hmm.
and everyone understands how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
It's that feeling when you finally find the missing piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
And you realize how it all fits together.
Exactly.
Everyone has a role to play.
And when you have that shared purpose, it's incredibly motivating.
Yeah, for sure.
That's one of the best things about OKRs. But obviously, having clear goals and being aligned, that's just the first step. You also need to be able to keep track of your progress and make sure people are accountable.
Right. Which brings us to the third superpower,
Mm-hmm.
track. What are some of the things about tracking that go beyond just like checking in on progress?
Well, one of the most important things is using data to make decisions and adjustments. Doerr talks about the Gates Foundation and how they used OKRs.
Oh, interesting.
They had this ambitious mission to make sure everyone has a healthy and productive life.
That's a big one.
It is, right. And Patty Stonesifer, their former CEO, she actually credits OKRs with allowing them to be both ambitious and disciplined.
How so?
They used data to track their progress, so they could see if they were falling short, and then they could shift resources if they needed to.
Oh, wow. That's a great example of how tracking is more than just checking boxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's about using data to improve and make good decisions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a GPS for your goals, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Like it keeps you on track.
And that data-driven approach is so important when you're dealing with really complex challenges, like the ones that the Gates Foundation tackles. I mean, they're constantly having to adjust their strategies and adapt to new situations, but they're always focused on that ultimate goal.
It's inspiring to see how they've made real progress on such a massive scale.
Mm-hmm.
But tracking also means being honest with yourself
Right.
and taking responsibility, right? It's not just about celebrating wins.
Yeah, you got to acknowledge when things aren't going as planned. That's where regular check-ins and being objective about your progress comes in. Doerr says it's super important to have a culture where it's okay to admit challenges and course correct.
It's about learning from the process
Yeah,
and seeing setbacks as opportunities to grow instead of failures.
exactly. And that mindset is crucial for the fourth superpower, which is stretch.
Yes. Stretch. That idea of pushing beyond your limits. What are some of the key things about stretch that Doerr talks about?
Well, one is that you have to set ambitious goals, things that really get you fired up.
Okay.
He talks about Google's 10x thinking. Like, they encourage people to think big, like 10 times bigger than what they initially thought was possible.
Oh, wow. Like, why shoot for the stars when you can aim for a whole new galaxy, right?
Exactly. But of course, you have to be okay with experimenting and taking risks.
Right.
Because not every crazy idea is going to work out.
Yeah.
But the lessons you learn are often worth more than the cost of failing.
So it's about changing how you think about failure. It's part of the process, especially when you're trying to innovate.
Absolutely. And it's about creating a culture where people feel comfortable taking risks.
Right.
Because they know they won't be punished if something doesn't pan out.
Yeah. And this ties into the story of MyFitnessPal.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's a great example.
That popular health and fitness app. It started with the founders just wanting a better way to track their own weight loss.
Yeah, they were just trying to solve their own problem. And look at what it became.
It shows that even a simple goal can turn into something huge.
Mm.
And they weren't afraid to aim high. They kept making it better.
They embraced the challenges.
And their story shows that stretch isn't always about giant leaps forward.
Mhm.
It can be about small, steady progress.
Like Doerr mentions, even something like swapping mayonnaise for mustard.
Exactly. Those little aha moments can really keep you going.
It's about realizing that progress isn't always a straight line.
It's about those little wins along the way.
And those wins often come from the data you're tracking. If you pay attention, you can learn a lot and make adjustments.
It's like those moments in our own lives where we suddenly see something in a new way. OKRs help us have more of those moments. They encourage us to experiment. But what happens when you need feedback or you need to course correct? That's where CFRs come in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, CFRs, conversations, feedback, and recognition. It's like a breath of fresh air compared to those dreaded annual performance reviews.
Definitely. And Doerr really lays out all the problems with the traditional way of doing performance reviews. They just don't have the flexibility to give meaningful feedback.
Yeah, I think we've all been in those awkward reviews where they're focused on the past instead of what you could do to grow in the future.
Exactly. The book talks about the need for a system that's more dynamic, a system where you have regular conversations, constructive feedback, and recognition when it's deserved.
So it's more about continuous learning and development. It's not just this one-time event every year.
Right. And Adobe has a great example of how to do this well. They totally got rid of annual reviews and replaced them with a system called check-in. It focuses on goals and expectations, feedback, and career development and growth.
It sounds like a more well-rounded approach.
Hmm.
It recognizes that performance isn't just about hitting deadlines, it's about individual growth and how you fit into the company's objectives.
Yeah. And the really important thing is that Adobe didn't just change the system, they actually invested in training their managers and leaders to make sure it worked. They had training sessions, online resources, even role-playing to help managers learn how to give good feedback and have those meaningful conversations.
That's key. You need buy-in from leadership, and you have to give managers the tools and skills they need to make CFRs work. It's about changing the whole culture around performance.
Exactly. And when CFRs are done right, they create a culture where feedback is seen as a good thing. It's an opportunity to grow and develop. You want to create an environment where people feel comfortable giving and receiving feedback because they know it's meant to help them.
It sounds like it shifts the focus from just evaluating people to actually helping them develop. It's more supportive and collaborative.
Exactly. And this connects to that bigger theme of culture that Doerr keeps coming back to. He says OKRs and CFRs aren't just tools, they're systems that are tied to the culture of an organization.
So it's like the soil you plant those goal-setting seeds in, the right culture helps them grow. Are there any examples of companies that have built that kind of culture?
Yeah, Zoom Pizza is a really interesting one. They make pizza with robots.
Cool.
And they started using OKRs from the very beginning, like before they even delivered their first pizza.
Wow, that's dedication. Why did they do that?
The co-CEOs, Julia Collins and Alex Garden, they really believed in aligning everyone around the same goals from day one. They wanted everyone to be on the same page and feel empowered to contribute.
So how did OKRs help them do that?
Well, they used OKRs not only to set goals, but to encourage open communication and feedback. They actually wanted their team to challenge them, the CEOs, directly. It was all about transparency and having constructive conversations.
That's pretty amazing. Not every leader is comfortable with that level of transparency, especially from their own team.
It definitely says a lot about their leadership style. They believe in collaboration. They know that feedback, even when it's tough, is how you grow and improve.
It reminds us how important leadership is when it comes to shaping the culture around OKRs and CFRs. But changing a company's culture is never easy. Doerr talks about some companies that struggled with that, right?
Yeah, he compares the experiences of Lumeris, a healthcare company, and the One campaign, which is led by Bono. Lumeris really struggled with OKRs because there was this clash of cultures within the company.
Oh,
Part of the company was very risk-averse,
okay.
and the other part was more innovative and liked to push boundaries.
Interesting.
They couldn't really make OKRs work until they dealt with those differences.
It's like trying to put together two puzzle pieces that just don't fit. Sometimes you have to reshape the pieces or try a different approach.
Exactly. On the other hand, you have Bono with his really strong personality and vision. He was able to drive cultural change at the One campaign through OKRs. He was great at inspiring people and uniting them around a shared purpose. That made it much easier to implement OKRs.
So it seems like there's no one right way to implement OKRs and CFRs. You have to adapt to the culture of your organization.
Definitely. Sometimes you have to face those cultural challenges head on, like Lumeris. Or sometimes you need to use strong leadership and a compelling vision to drive change, like Bono did at One.
It's interesting how these stories show us that culture change and OKRs are connected. It's not just about putting a new system in place, it's about creating the right environment. So what are some other important takeaways from these examples?
Well, I think one of the most important is that human connection matters, whether it's the focus on feedback and recognition in CFRs or the way OKRs can bring teams together. It all comes down to relationships.
That's so true. It's easy to get lost in the details of goal setting and performance management, but at the end of the day, it's people who make things happen. You need a supportive and inspiring environment for people to do their best work.
Absolutely. And that leads us to a question for you to think about. What's a goal you're really passionate about? Maybe a personal or professional goal. How could you use OKRs and CFRs to help you achieve it?
That's a great question to consider. These systems aren't just for companies, they can be really helpful for personal growth too.
Yeah, it's like giving yourself your own personal board of directors to help keep you focused, accountable, and motivated. And like we were talking about with those companies, the key is to tailor it to your own situation and your goals.
Right. And the cool thing is you can start small. Try using some of these concepts for a personal project, or maybe a goal you've been putting off. You might be surprised at what you can accomplish. I think that's a great point for everyone listening. We've talked about these ideas in the context of big organizations, but the principles apply to individuals too. Whether you're starting a business or writing a book or just want to learn a new skill, OKRs and CFRs can help you get there.
And one of the best things about these systems is how they can make you feel more in control and empowered. When you set clear goals, track your progress, and get open and honest feedback, you really start to shape your own future.
Such You're not just letting life happen to you. You can actually go out and create the future you want. And these tools can help you do that.
Yeah, they're a way to be intentional and reach your full potential.
Well said. I think that's a great place to wrap things up. We've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into OKRs and CFRs. I hope you've gotten some useful insights and maybe some inspiration to try these out in your own life.
Remember, this isn't the end. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep reaching for those amazing goals. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be sharing your own success stories.
Thank you for joining us at Wisdom House, where we bring you timeless insights from the greatest books. If you found this deep dive valuable, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom House. Stay curious, stay inspired, and we'll see you in the next video.